Ojivolta has been leading the influence of Playboi Carti's sound for a little while now. On Carti's latest album, Music or I Am Music, we saw him team up with Cardo to make some of the craziest beats on the project. In this video, we're going to be going over exactly how to make those darker rage trap beats that were featured on Playboi Carti's new album, specifically K-Pop and Rather Lie, which were two of my favorite songs on the project. I'm going to be going in depth and showing you guys exactly which plugins I use, how I processed them, and how I made the beat from beginning to end. Let's get straight into it. On Rather Lie, one of the first things I noticed was the kind of Clams Casino influence that the melody had to start with. As you all know, Clams Casino is extremely popular for the way he chops his samples and the types of ambient samples that he chooses. For our beat, I wanted to use a vocal sample that stood out and maybe wouldn't always be chosen. I went into the Universal Keys Volume 1 kit and I chose this sample to start. Instead of using the whole sample, I went into the kit and pulled out the individual stems. I exported these vocals as one audio clip. Then I went into Serato Sample and I played around until I found a repetitive pattern that kind of reminded me of a Clams Casino vibe and something that you could hear and compare to Rather Lie. Bounced those two sample chops into different audio clips, and now this is where we get into our processing. I started by adding Wave's meta filter. This is something you can do to really take it to the next level. Instead of just using a preset, once you find a preset that you like, still play around with different knobs and really find a sound that you think fits for the beat. For this melody, I turned up the drive, I changed the waveform, and I changed the LFO form. I also changed the delay just a little bit to kind of give it a little bit more feedback. After that, I added this Valhalla Uber mod and used the Eternal Jet verb. Then I went into my EQ and cleaned up some of the low end, then added some sweeps on the mids and the high mids. Now this is what our melody sounds like after the processing. After the processing, I exported that as another audio clip and went back into processing some more. I added this Dirty Dog reverb on top to give it some drive and kind of give it some distortion. I EQ'd to kind of boost the mids a little bit, and I added this Black 76 compressor. I added Lossy, only a little bit because I didn't want to overdo it. Then I added this low shelf EQ, kind of sweeping on the lows but not taking it completely out. And the last thing I did was add Shaper Box, the phase lift preset. I changed the lane to a half note, and then I added this filter on it. It almost doesn't even sound like the vocal we started with initially. I really wanted to give it more of an ethereal vibe, even though I knew that this part of the melody wasn't going to be the main part. Then I went into this crazy synth lead. On Rather Lie, there's a synth lead that you can hear that's kind of playful and honestly is my favorite part of the beat. Even though this beat is a little bit darker, I kind of wanted to mimic that, so I went ahead and added this retro synth pluck but treated it like a lead. I kept the melody really simple because I knew I was gonna do something different on the processing. I went into the mixer and added Backmask. I love this plugin because it kind of gives it like an unpredictable modulation and reverse type of effect that can really stand out on your melodies. Now, instead of just using the plugin on the melody as is, I went into Edison and I recorded a few bars of that melody with the effects on it. There was a specific part that I wanted where you can hear it kind of bring it back a little bit. So I took that particular part, I just looped it and layered it under the rest of the melody. Then I wanted to give it some more texture and some more depth. So I added another playful lead to kind of counter off of that first one. I went back into the Max Shooter kit and grabbed this textural lead. I played the sample on a different note to make it match the key of our project. The last thing we needed was just a little bit of ear candy for our melody. So I added some accents, and after pitching them down, I reversed them both to really make them stand out in the melody. So all together, this is what we have for our melody. time to get into the drums. Cardo has been killing the production scene and influencing a lot of us since his early days with Wiz, Kush and OJ, and that whole run. One of my favorite things is seeing Cardo step outside of his West Coast bag and get into his trap production bag like we saw on Euphoria.
You ain't even gotta be deep, I guess. Still love when you see success. Everything with me.
I noticed specifically on the Carti album that Cardo used a similar bounce on some of the drum patterns that he did. On our beat, I tried to give it the same kind of feel as K-pop with the drums and with the melody. So to start, I pitched our melody up 200 cents and I sped it up just a little bit to kind of match the same bounce as K-pop. For our 808, I know I wanted to go with something that has a lot of distortion, but still captures that clarity on the low end and knocks through. I chose this distorted 808 from a Max Shooter kit, and I gave our 808 pattern a very simple bounce just like Cardo does in his beats. Then I added another 808 pattern for the second half, and on this one I layered 2 808s. I noticed that in a lot of the Carti songs, the distorted 808s have layers, maybe sometimes 2 or 3 basses. The best way I found to get this to work without it having any clashing is to cut out the frequencies from each 808 that you don't need. For example, on this higher one, I cut out the lower frequencies to kind of let the higher pitch shine. For the hats, I noticed that a lot of the songs on Carti's album have a triplet hat pattern, kind of similar to like a 3 6 Mafia vibe, but it starts with a very simple 2-step pattern. Now to me, along with the 808, what really changes this from being a regular rage beat or just a trap beat to kind of the newer Carti sound is how they layer the snares, the 808s, and the kicks together. We want to leave space in between our claps to give the beat some balance. I layered that clap with another clap and then filled in the space with some open hat. Then to give the drums even more variation and a little bit more bounce, I added a snare on the second half. On Cardo's beats, it's almost like he lets the snare be like a secondary to the clap and uses a lot of counter fills to fill in the space. The last thing I did on this beat to really kind of give it that knock was add a kick. Even though I know a lot of the beats on Carti's album did not have kicks, the 808 was really the main player. So putting our Ojivolta inspired melody with our Cardo inspired drums is what we got together.